Hello, my name is Nicholas and I am on the autism spectrum. For my MYP project, I made a video sharing people's experiences with autistic people in order to raise awareness. Autism is a disorder that limits development in social skills. More specifically, it falls under a class of disorders known as autism spectrum disorders, or ASDs. Also under the spectrum is Asperger's syndrome, sometimes called highly functioning autism. For this project, I interviewed people affected by autism, asking them questions to help them share their experiences. This includes people with autism and people who have family members with autism. A study by the U.S. Center for Disease Control estimates that 2% of people in the U.S. are on the autism spectrum. The same study and other similar studies found that 80% of autistic individuals were male. This may be caused by genetics.
My son and my daughter both are on the autistic spectrum.
Well, two people primarily. My son, Colin, who was born in 1983, and his daughter, my granddaughter, Samantha.
Autism is mainly characterized by limited social interaction, limited communication, and a limited set of actions which are often repetitive. Most children with autism are diagnosed at an average of 16 months old. Asperger's syndrome, however, is usually diagnosed late in life.
Well, my son was not diagnosed with what they called Asperger's until he was a teenager.
I was diagnosed when I was 12.
Autism has numerous symptoms, but some of the main symptoms can be remembered by thinking of the word autism itself. A for arbitrary actions. People with autism perform certain actions seemingly at random. These include repeating actions, repeating words said to them, reacting strangely to certain things, and temper tantrums. U for unawareness of others. Autistic individuals have some difficulty communicating and listening to other people. They may avoid eye contact, be unaware when people talk to them, or have difficulty talking to people. T for trouble with reacting. Autistic people react somewhat strangely to certain things. They can also be unaware of danger. I for inability to express themselves. Autistic people have trouble expressing themselves or their needs. This limits their expressiveness. S for skills being underdeveloped. People with autism have trouble with social interaction, but they can also have trouble with changing routines or even lose previous skills. M for mind blindness. Mind blindness is the incorrect belief that everyone thinks and has the same opinion as an individual. Some autistic individuals have this.
My son stopped talking at age 18 months. But he also had skills that other children his age didn't have. He was diagnosed as a true hyperlexia. Letters and numbers were always fascinating to him. He could decode anything.
In kindergarten, there were different workstations that the kids would cycle through. And there were like 15 different workstations. They had to do one, then move on to the next, move on to the next, and the whole class was cycling from one to the next to the next. And I noticed that he would just stay on the one that he was interested in. He had no interest in moving on to another section. If it was blocks or if it was a puzzle or something like that, that's what he was focused on, and he didn't care about finishing a task. He didn't care about moving on, and he didn't understand that there was a final purpose. There was a conclusion. He just saw the one thing that he was focused on, and he was hyper-focused on, and that was as far as he could see.
If I'm out with a lot of people, I need almost a day to recover. I get tired, and it's almost like if you're really sick and you just don't want to go out. It's just what it is if I do a lot of social interaction. I just get almost like a hangover.
With autism, we work a lot on sensory integration and sensory processing skills. So being able to take in information from their environment, whether it's the sounds in the environment, the way something feels, the way their own body feels, and be able to process that information and be able to then change how they react to a situation based on that information. We work a lot on being able to follow directions, and being able to socially interact with other kids and play appropriately with other kids, and be able to go anywhere in their community that their families might like to go. Sometimes we work on being able to appropriately sit in a restaurant or go to church or anything like that.
If you have an autistic child, there are some ways you can cope with their disorder. Some schools give individualized education for people with disabilities. It usually comes at no cost. If you have an autistic child, their needs can be covered by the schools they go to. If you have an autistic child with siblings, you can teach your other children what to expect. Plan for your child's future. To accommodate for mental health issues, have your child eat healthfully. Exercise regularly. Make a healthy sleeping habit. Talk to a doctor or other family members if needed.
I think it's a little bit of a different experience because a lot of parents have their kids diagnosed when they're a lot younger. And so we just kind of got used to Marie just being Marie.
Samantha's dad certainly struggled in high school with some emotional regulation issues. He found a way around them by being athletic, having, outlets that way.
It's very hard for children on the spectrum to socialize with other children. That's why it's so important. Both of our children didn't really find they were comfortable until they found their own group of friends. And I think that's very, very important for kids on the spectrum, to find a group of kids that they can be themselves with.
In terms of standing up for autism, many organizations exist to raise awareness. Other places can help with emotional help if raising a child can become stressful.
One of the things I like to point out to people, well, a few things. One is that autism looks different on every person, like every single person. And then one of the other things that I like to share with people is that I think sometimes, especially with girls, because girls are often diagnosed later than boys, I think sometimes autism is a matter of capacity and demand. If it was a rough day, if people weren't friendly to her, the things she liked, the things she didn't like, I mean, she just kind of took it all in and rolled with the punches and just did fine. But that was 10 years old, so her capacity was just fine until 10. The demands of school, socially and everywhere other way, were a lot higher than what she could meet. And so she struggled more at that time.
There is, I think, a mistaken notion that autistic people have a disability. I would disagree with that strongly. I think they have special powers. And I think they are these great gifts to the world who can just do marvelous things if they were only given a chance. And I mean that along the entire continuum, even nonverbal children.
There are a lot of, what they call charities that say they support autistic rights, but they really don't. They kind of picture them as helpless. I really want to change that. Show more of autistic people as adults, because people really only see them as children, and show that it's not a disability. It's just the way they're made.
In some respects it's been a struggle, and in some respects it's been wonderful, because they learn things at their own level, and they learn lessons over and over. There's an expert in this area named William Stixrud, who's one of the most well-known people in autism research and dealing with families with autism. I went to a lecture he gave a few years ago, and he said, you need to bear in mind that your children may be developmentally delayed, but they are not developmentally injured. they'll get it. It just takes them a little longer than other children. It may take them maybe a year, a couple years, a few years longer than others. And then he told us that his son, who was on the autistic spectrum, the week before had just received his PhD. It's just a question of it takes longer to get there sometimes for people who are on the spectrum. It involves having patience. It involves a tremendous amount of having patience and being able to work with and provide support in ways that some parents may be finished by the time their kids are 13 or 14 or 15. We're still providing some of that support into their 20s because it takes a while for people on the spectrum to get to the point. They will get there, but it just takes a little longer. And that's something that you have to acclimate yourself to.
Some of the most amazing people I know have autism, and I've learned so much about life through those people. I feel like people with autism often aren't able to express for themselves what they're thinking and feeling, and therefore they might often be misinterpreted by other people. And I feel like that's a big social challenge for society, and that people in society need to learn more about autism.
With this information now in hand, you can face autism with certainty. Thank you for watching this project.